Happy holidays, everyone, or well, if you're not American, happy pre-holidays, I guess. This dev diary has been getting pushed back a bit between Vegas just not cooperating to actually store the voice messages that I'm recording, and just the fact that it was Thanksgiving over here in the United States. So, spending some time with the family, being able to take the days off of work to relax a little bit. So I wanted to give this dev diary as sort of a progress update, a little bit shorter, a little casual progress update, because there was a big fix that was made and a lot of insight that was learned regarding how the game loads things and etc and etc. So, let's just take it. We'll see where it goes. So one of the pieces of feedback that I got for the last video was that I had made the assumption that you had seen the alpha gameplay highlights video that I had posted, but I never actually I guess I mentioned that it was the gameplay test session, but that could be any session. So for posterity, just want to say that going forward, the bug that I'm going to be talking about, which is the level transition crash, is pretty much referring to the crash that occurred during that alpha gameplay highlights video. And assuming I can figure this out, it should appear on the top right of the video for you to check out if you haven't already, because it also shows off just how far we're getting, in terms of the actual mod and being able to play it in co-op and all sorts of stuff like that. So if you haven't already seen it, I would recommend it. And if you don't plan on seeing it, I'll summarize the issue. Essentially, when you were to cross a level transition, let's say you wanted to go into a house that lead to a basement, but the basement is a new level, it would crash the game when the second player or more would try to join in. And this actually was because of the hunch that I had before, in that, well, it seems like the game is trying to load something that doesn't exist. Because when you play alone, again, you are playing alone. When your game loads, when your computer loads, everything's ready to go because you're the one playing. There's nobody else you have to wait for. But when you play with people online, you gotta wait for them to get in the game, otherwise they don't exist. People from California, people from New York, people from Europe, Russia, not to say Russia's different from Europe, but you know what I mean. You gotta accommodate to make sure that all players are ready to go. And that's something that the code just wasn't facilitated for because it's a single player game. And what I discovered is actually that there is that feature that's there, that it would loop through things and it would store data for other players. When we transition through the level, we need to take their inventories along with us. We need to take their skill points and all sorts of stuff like that, because we need to make sure that we're on the same page when we get into that new area. But there was no means of essentially waiting for these people to join in. It would immediately try to apply the data it just collected onto nothing, which would freak the game out, and it would kick the host out, because the host, the person who's running the multiplayer session, would be like, well, I don't recognize any of these people, and it would lead to the crash. The solution, it came from a bunch of just digging in the engine. The engine is something that I don't have access to. In the Source SDK, you have access to server and client files. The server being sort of the logic that the game is following, and the client being the sort of visuals. Like, let's say AI navigation would be on the server, but the AI walking around, the physical appearance, would be on the client. We can actually see that. The source code is there for the 2013 version, which is the basis of what I'm using, although granted Dark Messiah is 2007, so it's a little ahead, but it's enough for me to be able to deduce what's happening when I'm reverse engineering. Whereas with the engine is actually something that you can only get access to by asking permission to Valve, because the source is their engine, and you're even paying a royalty. So it's a dangerous move for me to get too specific with this stuff, and that's something that I keep mentioning in all the knockout posts for this particular fix. Which I should also mention that I did post the, I guess, the tell-all or the documentation on how this was achieved and how this fix was achieved on Knockout. So if you go to the thread, you're interested in more technical stuff, I would recommend really going to the thread. It breaks the whole thing down, and you have the opportunity to ask questions in a more organized manner. But to go back to the actual fix, essentially it came down to figuring out what is the easiest way to wait for people. You know, I tried waiting for the people to go in by saying, okay, well, if the player, you know, the character actually gets in the server, then I can just give them the data later. So I would, you know, I would hook into when the player is spawned, when the actual character is created, and then I would just pop the data right on them. But that did not work because it still crashed when I did it. So the next step was saying, well, let me try to just simply not save the player, because logically if I can see that the game loads fine when I don't save the player, then at least I have more information to go on. But even when I did not save the player, or rather even didn't load the player, if I chose not to even apply that information, it would still crash. So I'm trying to think, well, why the hell would this happen, you know? And I ended up finding out that the save system, the single player save system, is still in effect when you change levels, but not in the same capacity that you would where you can just go and load the game. You know, you click load game and you have a bunch of slots, you have some auto saves, quick saves, etc. These files are made so that you can continue playing in single player, but there are actually these temporary little files that are made on transition that have, you know, entity and object information between those levels, and the player is being saved in there. This was going to be a whole mess for me to try and figure out exactly the formatting of this, because this is, first of all, different across different versions of the engine, but on top of that, this is a closed source one. And although I have a general idea of what was in there, there are these things called handlers, which basically say, here's the data you saved, I'm going to handle how it loads, right? I can't tell what those handlers really do internally because, well, I mean, I can if I really break it down, but is it worth that effort? So it came to a step of, well, how do we fix this? You know, how do we figure out the easiest way that doesn't involve me splitting hairs and going bald? And although I did go bald a little bit, the solution is the reason why I went bald. It was literally because it's like, it's a no-brainer, and it pulls your hair out saying that you didn't think of it earlier. You're playing a single-player game, right? If you're playing a single-player game and somebody tells you, hey, you gotta go eat dinner, you're gonna go and pause the game. You're going to press your pause button, you can press escape, whatever it is, and the game will stop. It will stop all the logic that's handling it. And this works well for single-player. And I, looking through some console commands, found that there is a capability of logic to still be maintained on the server, the information that's being networked to the people that are in the game. You can actually still have that active even when the game is paused, which means that these are two completely separate pieces of logic that we can manipulate. So, after much breaking down the engine binary and figuring out how to do this the best, I essentially made it so that the game will just pause itself and wait for everyone to be ready before it starts the next level. Which is actually really good in the long run, because imagine transitioning to a level and then there's a bunch of enemies over there and you're not ready. You're gonna get spawn killed. It's gonna be freaking annoying when you start dying to just people that are waiting for you. Especially if we start moving into the realm of adding more enemies and making it more interesting for more players. So this fixes that issue, but it goes even further than that. Because when you load the game for the first time as the host, as the person who's running the server that people are joining, you actually are late to your own server. You see, the server itself, because these are two separate entities, the server itself loads in. It doesn't wait for you. You load in afterwards. So I would say maybe like a second, or maybe even a few milliseconds. But that's enough to stop the triggers from the level from, you know, putting you in the right spot, applying the right inventory items, even playing cutscenes in the beginning, which of course freak out the game and cause it to crash. And that fixed a whole host of issues on that front that really, I can only say thank God, because I was actually able to go from the first 4 chapters straight through now, including the cutscenes, including the like video files that play in between. Dialogue all works, music's playing, the inventory items are all there. It was really good, and I want to do a supplementary video, do another video maybe with Riddick, where we go through from the beginning and do a couple of chapters so you can sort of see that this is now actually shaping to be playable. It's not just we have to work around and see what's broken. It seems more like we're getting to the point where things might not just work the right way, but they'll still work. That's pretty cool. And I've also been, because this dev diary has been delayed a little bit, I also did some extra work. There were some crashes that were happening with, for example, the Stonehelm gates. For some reason the horse would crash when it got startled, and it is actually my fault. The reason why it crashed is because when I fixed another issue, I didn't like, I guess, account for the horse. The issue was when, you know, the player looks up and down, the pitch of the player model will actually change, which is incorrect. It should be using the pose parameters, which are essentially, you know, when you look up and down, you don't move your entire, you know, from your foot, you don't go planking on the floor, you move your neck, right? Those are essentially pose parameters. They're pieces of the body that move reflective to the actions that the player has, right? And I had fixed this so that it would actually use them, but if you're on the horse, it isn't supposed to use them because the static animation that's there would cause it to override it, and then it gets a little fussy, and then they start fighting with each other and it crashes the game. But this was my fault and I fixed it. And then there was a couple of other stuff that I checked out. You know, the intro cutscene for the tutorial mission. It was weird that it wasn't playing for all people, and the reason why was actually because although the code factored in that we should incorporate all the players, which is really weird when you think about it, because this is not meant to be a co-op game, so why is it looping through every player? Very interesting concept in and of itself. It doesn't actually evaluate whether or not these people exist, so you end up having some weird artifacts or memory accessing that it doesn't exist, and it freaks out, it crashes, or just something stupider. You know, it could go all sorts of ways. But that was also fixed. I had to just include my own checks in there. And that sort of brings me on to another thing that I was discovering as I was fixing the previous issues, you know, the level change and etc. I mentioned on the Twitter that the save system is something that is strangely manipulatable. It's as if this game, I swear, is built to be played with co-op, even though it doesn't have the feature. Because with the way that I've figured out the structure, I can actually inject my own information into there to save it within the file, so that you could actually quick save in the middle of a multiplayer game, right? It'll save all the players' information, and then you could load that game again and have new players come in, or the old players come in and they get their info back, and like all of this would just equalize itself. And I just found that fascinating. I think it's really cool that for some reason things just fall into place. I can't take credit for that. That is something that is already innately built in. I mean, there's places that are hard-coded to not be multiplayer, which is also weird. It's like things that were in the SDK for the single-player branch didn't have these weird checks where it's like, are we having more than one players? Yes, I want you to break. So just some stuff like that. And I really, you know, I'm realizing now that this is not so much a short video, but I'm hoping that it gives sort of I guess it gives you some light on what's been going on the past week. And again, if you want to see the more technical stuff, I posted it on Knockout, and I'm probably gonna, when I post this video on there, I will also post the extra stuff that I'm talking about, like the functions that I had to fix and sort of that, because that's not engine related, so I can actually post the code for that without getting a nice big lawsuit shoved in my face. But yeah, I guess I should stop it there. If I forgot anything, I'm probably gonna figure it out after I spend the 3 hours processing this video, considering I'd already spent 12 hours plus a day trying to process this video. Thank you, Vegas. But unsarcastically, I want to thank everybody that's been coming in. You know, I've been talking with more people. We recently got featured on the headlines of Mod Database, which is cool. A bunch of new people came in. I've been talking with them over, you know, ModDB DMs, Twitter, the Discord, and there's even some few knockout people coming in and interacting. And you know, I do, again, I always say I appreciate talking with the community. This is a project built for the community. We're doing this together. So you know, we've had those new subscribers. If you're not already subbed, jump in. I post inactively on Twitter, so there you go. Like, I'm gonna start shoving my handles in. You know, Discord. You can join the Discord. Talk to me. The Discord link should work. Somebody left a comment last video that's saying that it didn't work. So I fixed that. It should be the most up-to-date link. And yeah, I just wanna, you know, give thanks to everybody. You know, it was Thanksgiving the other day, and you know, you can give thanks every day. There's nothing that stops you from being thankful, being alive, being with people you love, and being with people that love you, even people that hate you. You got to thank them too. You know, that's how it is. Because without the yin and yang, you know, we're gonna crumble apart. So, thanks to everybody. I'm gonna end the video here. I'll see you next time, and do not hesitate to comment. You know, do not hesitate to talk to me. Go for it. Have a good time, and I will see you for the next one.